Hello and welcome to another webinar. I am your host, Ryan Faloona, and I am here with Jonathan Mallard from the onboarding team. Jonathan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Ryan. It's a sunny, beautiful day here in Detroit.
Actually, and it's a sunny, beautiful day here in Chicago too. A little on the chilly side, but sunny and gorgeous nonetheless. So good to hear. I'm really excited because we are going to be showing off one of our expanded features today in the unusual options calendar. Some of these improvements that we've made to this calendar have been absolutely awesome, and I'm really thrilled to be able to share this with you and the Zinger community today. So, you ready to dive right in?
Absolutely. I'm excited.
Okay, great. So the first thing that we have here is you can see that I have the calendar tool loaded in on the left-hand side, and I have the details tool on the right-hand side. And anytime that I click the ticker in the symbol column, it's actually going to load that in the details tool. And for this example, I went ahead and pulled up the chart for Pinduoduo, ticker PDD. Now, what I did with the calendar here is I actually sorted the calendar by my watch list. And the reason that I did that is because I have a watch list of stocks that I watch every single day, stocks that I'm apt to trade because I either have traded them in the past, I follow the company itself, or I follow the news flow for the particular company. So these are stocks that I've already become comfortable with. And when you just load in the calendar on its own, there's nothing wrong with doing that. You can gain a lot of valuable information from it. It just turns out that there is a lot of information on the screen. So step one, in terms of making it easy for me to synthesize the data that I'm seeing and plan a trade, is to filter it by the stocks that I'm more apt to trade. And that's what I've gone ahead and done. I've gone ahead and filtered it by my watch list. The second step here, because whenever you filter by a watch list or a particular stock, it's going to give you as much history as it can. And obviously, there's a lot of data there, so it might take a little bit to load that in. What I've done here is I've actually clicked on the filters button, which is on the right-hand side of the calendar tool. And under last trade, you can see by this little icon, I have a filter applied to last trade. And if I expand that, you can see that the only filter I applied was today. I'm only interested in trades from today because for our example here, we're going to try to find you what the unusual options are telling you, and then we're going to try to show you how you can potentially trade off that information. So right here, I'm only interested in the contracts that trade today. You might be interested in the contracts in the past. You might be doing research for a potential play, and you might say, what was the option paper for ticker XYZ last week? You can absolutely do that with the calendar tool. You would just select last week as your time frame, and then whatever ticker it is that you want to follow. So you can either do that with the symbol or the last trade filter here in the filters menu. Now, for this example, I only want to see today. The third thing I've done, and I've done this ahead of time, obviously, is I want to set up the columns that are important to me. If you click on the columns, you'll have a list of all of these different columns that you can actually add to your tool. Some of them I don't necessarily need. I don't need the security type. I don't need to know that. I don't need to know the option symbol, which is like a long archaic symbol that involves the strike and the expiration date as well as the ticker. I don't need all of that. The way that I'm programmed to look at this is I just want to know what the ticker is, and then I want to look at what the actual strike is. So I've gone ahead and turned on some of the ones that are very important to me. I obviously want to know if the put call. I want to know if it's a sweep or a regular trade. I absolutely want to know the expiration date. One of the new features that we've added is days to expiration. And I want to know that too, because you can see here when I'm glancing at this DTE column, you can see that a lot of these are short term. So there's been a lot of trades here that are in the short term, but some of these are long-term trades. This Grubhub days to expiration, 128 days, we got 4 months there on that particular trade. And likewise for the other two Grub trades and 5 months, it looks like for the Beyond Meat. So days to expiration is going to be a very, very quick way for me to determine whether or not this is a short-term plan or a short-term move or something a little bit more long-term. I obviously I'm considering the strike price, so I definitely want to know what that is. Bid and ask. This can also be very important. I don't need it for these particular examples today, so I have them turned off. But there's many things that you would actually use this information for. Again, for today's example, we don't need it. Size tells me the size of the individual trades. I definitely want that. We're going to go into that in a little bit more depth. Trade count. This refers to how many different routes or trades it took in order to get this order filled. So you can see here on these sweeps, there's multiple trades that had to be executed in order to get this order filled. And we're going to go into that in a little bit more depth shortly as well. Total trade price. This is really good for me to know. I want to know exactly how much the trader or institution spent when buying this trade. And one of the reasons why I like that information is because everyone's trading account is different. Everyone has different resources and different capital that they can actually use. If there's someone out there that's willing to spend $250,000, $500,000, or even higher than that, if that's good enough for them, then that's interesting enough for me to at least monitor and see what's going on. Maybe
Right.
I do want to follow that trader in there, because if they're willing to bet $1 million on a particular trade, it might be good for the amount of money that I'm going to bet, which is going to be far less than $1 million. And then some of the other columns here are option price. I definitely want to know the price at which the contract cost, or the price of the contract at the time of the trade. I want to know the open interest, the volume over the open interest. So that's the volume to open interest ratio. And then I want to know the sentiment. And obviously the last trade. I just want to confirm that they were done today. Now, as a really quick reminder here, this sentiment is based off of a chart that you may or may not have seen before, especially if you've reached out via the help channels. I have a link here to the help site. And if I actually go ahead and type in option at the top here, and I click on how do I understand option alerts, this document will teach you how to understand the alert that comes through signals. It breaks it down into each different chunk and then explains what that means. This chart here at the top, this is where the sentiment indicator is coming from. So based on whether it's calls at the ask, calls at the bid, or so on, will determine whether or not it's bullish or bearish. And instead of me having to look that up, we simply just give that to you in the sentiment column. So now that I have this set up the way that I want, and I'm looking at the data that the way that I want, it's time to find out if there's anything that can be gleaned from this information. So the first one that I clicked on here, it's literally the first one in the list. I went ahead and clicked on it. It's ticker PDD for company Pinduoduo. And right here, let's examine the actual option trade first, and then let's take a look at the chart and see if we can make some sense of it. We have a put sweep here. Let me actually move this over. We have a put sweep here that happens to be bearish, and it expires in 9 days. So if we expand this a little bit, it looks like the expiry date is May 22nd. So this is a short-term trade. They bought the 60 strike. They bought 485 contracts. And this particular sweep needed to be split into 37 different trades in order to get filled. The trader or institution here spent nearly $250,000 on this trade. So this is definitely interesting to me. Now let's keep reviewing some of the other data in here. The price of the contract was $450 per contract. There was 36 open contracts at this strike prior to today. And today there's been 504 contracts bought and sold. So we have this one trade of 485 making up the total, or making up a majority of the volume from today. The entire volume today was 504 at the time of this trade. One trade took 485 of those. And this gives us a rather large volume over open interest ratio, which the higher that we see that, the higher that ratio is, the better that is, the more I'm interested in that. Because in this particular case, this is bearish for Pinduoduo, but this is new eyeballs being brought to this stock. There were only 36 contracts owned prior to today. And now all of a sudden, something that happened today is causing a whole bunch of people to flood into this particular contract. Let's see if we can figure out what that is. Now that I've actually clicked on the ticker and I've loaded it up in the chart here, I have a daily chart here, and immediately the very first thing that I can notice here is that this stock is extended. And if I zoom out a little bit more, you can see here that looks like back in the past we had a nice large gap here that gapped this. This is back in August of last year. We gapped from 26 to 30, and then we really made a move here. So a lot of volatility up and down, a gap down here, but still didn't breach that prior gap, right? So it looks like, in fact, let's go ahead and make this a little bit easier to see. Let's go ahead and draw the horizontal line right here at that gap. So you can see as soon as this stock actually gapped above that $29 level, it actually has not breached beneath it. So that's a good sign. But let's see what else is going on here. So now I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and we can see that recently, since April, this stock has made a crazy one. We've run from $36 all the way up to near 60. So it's nearly doubled in the course of 2 months. That is an exceptional run. Wow is right. That's moving pretty good. I wish I would have been in on the long side of that. You could have doubled your investment there if you were buying equity, but that's not what we're here for. We're here to analyze the next trade. So already we can kind of see that this stock is fairly extended, and some of these green bars, we'll call them power pushes from one of our guests from last week, who came up with a great term that I want to use over and over again. These are really strong green candles, and they're happening on volume. So this is definitely this stock has definitely got some eyeballs in it. But now let's examine this trade. So we've got someone that says, well, we're going to do a bearish put sweep. We're going to buy as many contracts as we can. We're not necessarily concerned with the price. We just want exposure. And so what this trade is saying, we can't infer that this trader actually wants to convert these contracts into stock. In this case, it would be they would be short stock because they're buying puts. We can't necessarily infer that, but we can infer that over these next 9 days, they're expecting some movement. And because this is a bearish put sweep, we're expecting some movement to the downside. Now that we've actually looked at this chart and we can see that this chart is extended, I can absolutely see why this stock would actually pull back. In fact, the last time that it had a nice little run up like this was back in the late April. All right, so it started on the 20th of April. It looks like we ran from 44 up to 54, and then we pulled back down almost to 44 again. In fact, we pulled back down to 45. So it makes complete sense that this trader is saying, you know what, something similar is going to happen here. Now, because we actually have a daily chart selected, each of these candles represents 1 day. So if we count the candles from the high, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So in 7 days, this stock went from 53.50 all the way down to 45. So if you're using options to capture $9 worth of movement, or in this case, that's almost 20%, this is definitely can have the potential to be a very, very profitable trade. And it looks like, based on the data that we have, that's what this trader is setting up for. One of the great things about Benzinga Pro is we don't actually just have to rely on the options data and the chart. They're very, very good data points, but we can also check out the news. So the other thing that we see here is right at the top, we have an unconfirmed earnings date for Pinduoduo. So that means that the company has not confirmed their earnings date. We're judging this based on earnings reports in the past. The company has not yet confirmed that to us. We'll keep an eye on that. But if I click on the news tab here, we can actually review the news. Now, looking in here, I don't really see anything. Looks like we had a stock that hit a 52-week high. So it looks like yesterday we were alerted that the stock hit a 52-week high and then did it again today. So we have 2 consecutive 52-week highs. Looks like 3 consecutive 52-week highs, excuse me. So obviously this is in the mature part of this move. It has been moving. It's almost doubled, and now we're putting in consecutive 52-week highs. So I can absolutely see why someone is trying to play a mean reversion trade here. Now, I don't see any negative news here, so I don't necessarily think that there's a catalyst on what's going on here. In fact, our news desk team put out a whim yesterday that said Pinduoduo shares are trading higher, not currently seeing company-specific news. So again, what they're noticing is that this stock has actually made quite a run. It's putting in a high, and we're not really sure that this is happening on any material news. Now, lo and behold, today we had a bearish put sweep here, and it actually, one of the other things that I use in my personal trading is that I pay attention to this sweep number. When you're looking at the actual signal itself, you'll see sweep and then a number in parentheses right next to it. That's what this is. That's what this trade count column is, number of trades in the option activity. That's that number in parentheses. So I'm normally interested in things that are higher than 30. Things that are higher than 40 really pique my interest. I've seen things as high as like 70. So right here, this is already interesting. And again, this is someone that's betting nearly $250,000 here. They're probably pretty sure on what they're doing, or they have a risk profile to allow for that. Wouldn't that be nice?
I noticed one other thing on the
news.
news.
Yeah, go ahead.
If over on the news tab again for Pinduoduo,
yep.
I noticed a bullish sweep back on May 4, right before this really ripped up, I think. And yeah, if you go down, that actually was important. It looked. Now, could you just kind of give some commentary on that? On why would our news desk kind of take that as a signal and then repost it as a headline on a BZ wire? I mean, I assume that it's significant because it's 800 contracts.
Correct. So, this is you correctly alluded to this. You can also see that there's a sentiment indicator next to this. So our news desk selected this as one of the more unusual options to alert our users to. So this is something that was spotted by our news desk and then reposted through the Benzinga wire source. Very sharp eye there, Jonathan. I actually missed that despite having it highlighted. So thank you very much for doing that. Now let's take a look here. So they bought 800 contracts. They spent quite a bit of money. And let's take a look and see what happened. What was, I think was May 5th? Yes, May 4th, excuse me, May 4th. Let's take a look on the chart and see where May 4th is. All right, so here's May 4th. All right, and so take a look at what happened here. This stock ran up and then sold back, so it reverted back to the mean. And then on May 4th, okay, on May 4th, it actually reversed and took off. And you can see in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 trading sessions, this thing went from 45.50 all the way up to close to 60. That is an extreme move. And so a really good point. If you had actually followed the trader into this particular trade, this would have been a nice one for you. You bought these contracts at $1.61. They were the 50 calls, so you would have been in the money. Not just, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 days after your trade, those contracts would have been in the money. That's an easy double at least, and then it continues. So you could have had a multiple 100% winner following that trade in there. All right. So Jonathan, again, really, really good spot there. And what's so great about that is that our news desk was actually the one that caught this. This wasn't just coming in from the calendar. This is something that somebody saw and said, hey, that's bullish. And so, it looks like here they actually bought contracts that expire on May 15th, and you can see that earnings are May 18th. So I can infer from that what this trader was trying to do is they were trying to capture stock movement prior to earnings. So they don't necessarily want to have exposure for the earnings binary event, but they do want to capture movement moving into earnings. And if we look at the chart, we can see here that what happened was this stock was super strong. I mean, it was pushing up on volume and then reverts real quickly. And then on the day that sweep happened, it actually turned around again. So one of the reasons that this is a great example is because this is not a stock like Apple. This doesn't trade at the volume that a stock like Apple or Google or one of the huge banks trades at. This is more of a smaller company, but you can still capture tremendous gains in stocks like this. So now moving back to our potential trade here, we have this came in this morning. All right, so let's take a look at the intraday chart. Okay, so this right here, and this is happening live right now. You can see that this stock is selling off like crazy. what happened here is that this stock actually gapped up this morning, and then right at the open, it ran again on volume. So there are a couple of things in play here. It could be that these are people trying to buy stock ahead of the earnings print. Maybe these are people, maybe it was recently upgraded or something like that. Maybe there's some catalyst that's driving it up. However, when we get to that new all-time high, it looks like the stock stalls a little bit here, and we have this bearish options trade. Since this trade has come through, this stock has really kind of reverted here. And I can surmise that this is the thesis of this particular trade. The trader here is thinking, let me go back to the daily chart here. This stock has made a considerable move. It's probably due for a pullback. And if we look at what happened in the past, when this stock has put in powerful moves like this, it has pulled back. Even if it reversed and continued in the future, there was still a moment of pullback. And that's important because no stock is ever going to go straight up every day. Conversely, no stock is going to go straight down every day. I suppose if it, went out of business or filed bankruptcy, it would go to zero. But that's a whole nother story. What we're trying to capture here is we're trying to capture this short-term movement. And remember, we already know that this trader is trying to capture short-term movement because they bought a contract that has 9 days left till it expires. So we know that this is short term. That's all we care about right now. Maybe their earnings print is going to be great. Maybe they're going to have, a blowout quarter or something like that. We're not concerned about that because we're concerned about the short term. So what we can surmise here is that this stock is actually pulling back, and so this trade makes complete sense to me. In fact, because you were able to, I'm going to guess that this trade. Let me see if I can actually turn that on. Time. Let me go ahead and turn the time on. All right. So this time right now is actually in UTC time. So this was 3. This happened at 9:45 in the morning. Let's see where we're at on there. Yep. So this happened when this stock was above $60. All right. So we actually bought a put sweep of something that was at the money. It was actually in the money. And so this trade, contracts that are in the money or at the money, as it continues moving in your favor, the contract price is going to appreciate at a 1-to-1 ratio. Whereas if you buy contracts out of the money, it's going to be slower than that. So that's another lesson on how to trade options. I don't want to waste too much time with that. But basically what's going on here is they chose this strike because they wanted it to be at or in the money or close to it. And the reason for that is because as this pulls back, the premium is actually going to increase, and they're going to end up making money on their trade. So the one more thing that I wanted to discuss here real quick, let me go ahead and turn time off, is the volume to open interest ratio. So this is a really eye-popping number. You can see here, I actually sorted the chart by this, and the Pinduoduo trade is at the top. So I can absolutely see exactly why the trader took this. And all I had to do was look at the unusual options calendar, take that data point, and then use the chart to kind of see if there's any other data point that I can gather from that. And this is exactly what we've done. We have effectively formed a trade plan right here. We said, okay, well, we saw a bearish put sweep on Pinduoduo. We took a look at the chart. We can tell that this stock is extended, probably due for a pullback. So that's what happened here. Someone took a bearish put sweep. They're hoping to capitalize on this pullback, and then we'll see what happens actually going into earnings. So right here, to me, this is a cut and dry example. This is and the way that this option is priced at $450 a contract, this is actually fairly easy to get into. You'll notice some of these contracts are more expensive. So here we have a contract that's $730 a contract. Here we've got one down here that for Tesla that is $1,550 per contract. Some people are comfortable trading that. I personally don't like to trade contracts that are that high priced because options can move very, very quickly, and I want to be able to get in and get out without having a whole bunch of my capital sucked up. So something that's priced more appropriately for my risk tolerance in the 450 range, this is absolutely something that I would consider taking. Now, I didn't take this because I was working this morning, but that's okay because this type of stuff happens every single day. Maybe it won't be on Pinduoduo like it was today, but stuff like this can happen every single day, and you can use this tool to find these opportunities.
Thanks, Ryan. That was a great breakdown of all those different pieces there.
And it looks like I've actually got another one here. So you think we got time for another example real fast, Jonathan?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, and I would just say a couple quick things here. Yeah, I see one question in the chat right now. If you guys have questions for me and Ryan, please go ahead and throw those in the chat or in the Q&A. Just very briefly, someone asked, how do you access the unusual options calendar? You know, when you first bring up the calendar tool, it does open up the earnings calendar at first. So could you just show them how to do that?
Absolutely. And you know what? Because I actually have some settings and filters applied on this one, I'm not actually going to change them, but I do want to demonstrate. So when you click on the calendar, you'll either, like Jonathan mentioned, you'll either load the earnings calendar or even potentially the analyst ratings calendar. The drop-down menu is right here in the center. So right where it says on my screen, unusual options activity, if I expand that drop-down, you'll see the other 12 calendars that we have. So we've got 13 total here, and yours might be on earnings or analyst ratings or a different one. So if you want to see the options activity, just select unusual options activity from that drop-down, and it will go ahead and bring up this particular calendar. Great question, because I actually skipped over that and dove right into the example. That's what happens. Sometimes I just get so excited that I just go right into the meat of it and I forget some of the ancillary things. So great question. Thanks for asking.
Awesome.
Clark is asking, will this be taped for review later? You missed the start, I'm guessing. You said, yes, absolutely. We will upload this and have it available in the past webinars directory on the help site.
Fantastic. So yeah, let's keep going here. I think you had another great example.
Yeah, I do. So, so right here, the Pinduoduo, what we did here is we actually sorted by volume over open interest first in the calendar to kind of help us narrow down our search. And you can see here that these next few, although it's not as high as 14, they're still pretty high. We've got 11, 9 or 9.7, 9 flat, 8.5. So these are pretty good ratios here. And if we scroll back over, you'll notice that these are all the same. These are all put sweeps on GE. And they're all the same strike and expiry. So we have a whole bunch of different trades here that are coming into the same strike and expiry. We call that a repeat buyer. All right. So maybe it's not the same person buying more. We don't have data to figure that out. But what we can figure out is that multiple people are coming in here and swooping up lots of 1,000 contracts or more. Maybe it is the same person. Maybe they're just buying a little bit later, but clearly something's going on here. So actually, let me go ahead and turn the time back on here. So you can see here that while these are relatively similar, they're still kind of spaced apart. So the first trade came in at this would have been 9:24, and the second, or I'm sorry, 10:24. The second one came in at a second later, but then the third trade came in 3 minutes later, and then a few seconds after that, and a few seconds. So you can see that some of these trades are being spaced out. If these trades were all coming from the same person, you would have seen maybe a second difference, maybe 2 or 3 seconds, but not several minutes. And they wouldn't have been in different lots like that. So right there, we can already, just by looking at the time and the amount of contracts, we can already determine that there's more than one purchaser coming in here. And it looks like people are buying similar amounts. It looks like they're buying in $20,000 lots. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we've got 7 purchases that are on average about $20,000. So that can be significant. And you can also see that the contract price is the same, or relatively the same. Looks like they started buying them when they were 16 cents. They actually traded all the way up in the matter of a minute. They traded up to 19 cents, and they were still getting bought. And you can see that the volume here is increasing, right? So we have a ton of volume coming in. Excuse me. We have a ton of volume coming in.
I'm seeing some other GE put sweeps farther down that list too. So there's that lot. Those lots right there at the top, but then you have other orders as well.
Correct. And actually, that's a really good observation, Jonathan, because here we've got someone's buying the 5.5 put, as opposed to the 5 put that's at the top. So let's take a look and see if we can figure out some more data points for this GE trade, and maybe we can figure out what's going on here. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and click on GE. It's going to load up the chart here. And you can see that this is a pretty ugly chart. So GE has obviously been through some trouble. If we zoom out here, this thing came all the way down in 2017. This thing was in the 30s. Now we're printing in the 5s. This thing is really taken a beating over the past few years. And recently, since February, it's actually been more than cut in half. Right, so in February we were looking at about $13, and we're at about $5.50 today, $5.55 currently. So this stock has absolutely had some pain, and it looks like today the pain is not near the end. It looks like we're still going to experience some pain. So let's take a look. Now, this is a really good example because earlier today I actually spotted on Twitter a rumor that GE was floating Chapter 11 bankruptcy. This is important. This is not confirmed, all right? So this is not actual confirmed news. This was a rumor on Twitter. So whenever you come across a rumor on Twitter, take it with a grain of salt. However, you can often find things on Twitter before they actually hit major news outlets or before it actually gets reported as fact, where it's still in its rumor stage. So I had actually seen that GE is considering Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Now I'm seeing a whole bunch of put sweeps, short-term put sweeps. That's not a good sign. What we can do here is we can actually click on news. Okay, so right away, something is jumping right off the screen here. All I'm seeing right now are these put sweeps, and it looks like we had one call sweep in here, a long-dated call sweep. This was the January of 2022 expiry. So this is someone buying a call sweep way out in the future. Looks like someone also bought a call sweep for this Friday, and then maybe one more for July. But everything else is puts. So right here, we can see that puts outweigh calls tremendously from this news release. Now, let's skip the options for a sec because we're already kind of looking at that. Let me click on BZ Wire here. All right, so I don't really see any news here. Looks like on Monday, the shareholders did not approve a shareholder proposal for appointment of an independent chairman of the board. So I haven't really been following the board battle at GE. This news line for me is kind of neutral. There's not a whole lot that I can gather here. Friday of last week, we had UBS maintain a buy rating but lower a price target. Again, kind of neutral. Yes, they lowered the price target, but they're still telling people to buy. So there's some news in here, but nothing that really jumps off the screen. And so let's click on press releases just to make sure we're doing our due diligence. Yeah, it doesn't look like there's a bunch of press releases either that are very important. So what I'm getting at here is that maybe there is a trade to be had here, because I heard a rumor this morning about a potential bankruptcy. And then when I actually come in here, I'm seeing a ton of bearish put sweeps. So I'm seeing repeat buyers at the 5 strike. I'm also seeing people buy up puts at the 550 strike. And I would imagine that if we kept going through this list, we would find even more on that. So it looks like this could actually be a potential trade based on some of the rumors that we heard this morning. We don't have any confirmed news, but we have a rumor floating around on the internet, and now we're actually looking at a whole bunch of put sweeps for there. So for me, this is definitely something that I would be interested in taking a risk on. The other thing here is that these options are very attractively priced. 19 cents. All right, 19 cents. You could actually buy 10 contracts here and spend $190 on that position. And so to me, this is something that is worth watching. Again, I was working this morning. I actually wasn't out looking for a new trade, so I didn't actually take this. I have no position in this trade. But reviewing this trade now, I can absolutely see why someone took this. And then just to use the chart one last time to confirm this, we got an ugly chart here. We've got a stack that can't get out of its own way. It looks like it's really, really selling off. It's had multiple very steep sell-offs. If we go back here a little bit. Sorry about the speed of scrolling here. If we look back, even after some of these really steep sell-offs, the stock looks like, so we got a really steep sell-off here. Stock looks like it tries to rebound, can't, sells off again. Another little battle, even has a little bit of a pop, cannot hold it, sells off again. Can't hold that level, sells off again. So we have a pattern here now of this stock really, really having trouble. So it would not surprise me if that actually continued going forward. Now we've heard about a rumor on Twitter. Now we're seeing a whole bunch of traders put their money where their mouth is, and we're looking at a whole bunch of bearish put sweeps. This is absolutely something that you could consider. And so right here, these are two great examples that show you how you can actually use the options calendar and options flow in order to plan out a trade. And what's great here is Pinduoduo is a stock that has really been performing well recently, and GE is the opposite of that. It's really, really been struggling, and we have two bearish trades on that. So just really, really interesting stuff, and this is actually very simple to do. All I had to do was filter my calendar on the stocks that I follow all the time. It's going to be different for everybody. And then I basically just sorted on the volume over open interest, and I examined these first. And within the first two trades, I was able to find two things that are both very, very appealing, and definitely something at minimum following, because who knows? News could break. We could actually, with respect to this GE trade, we could actually get a piece of news tomorrow that says the General Electric Board met and they've avoided Chapter 11 bankruptcy, or they've avoided bankruptcy until 2021 or whatever the hypothetical headline is. Well, if we saw a headline like that, we could infer that this stock is going to pop. Maybe it'll run. This stock has actually been been quite depressed. So maybe there's a whole bunch of people betting the other side. And if we get a positive headline, you can actually trade this to the upside. But given the data that we have, it's not really looking good right now. And with the Pinduoduo trade, the first one that we examined, perhaps its earnings comes by, they blow earnings out of the water, they have a really good report, and they issue really good guidance going forward. Well, that mean reversion trade that trader is in for the short term, that might become null. That thesis may literally die on the table, the board table where they're talking about their earnings. And then after that, we could see if we can stock this for a potential long entry. Or maybe the earnings is not so great, and this stock that's almost doubled over several months might actually come back in, and then you could take another bearish trade. So there's a lot of things that you can decipher from watching the options flow, and the calendar makes it quite easy to actually figure out what's going on.
Awesome. I'm seeing some great questions come in here from Robbie, Depp, and Walter. First of all, there's a question of, like, you're seeing Depp a list very different from ours. So just remember that Ryan has this all filtered by his watch list. So you'll notice that under where it says watch list, there's that little yellow number 1 next to it. So we're only looking at companies that are already in Ryan's watch list. So that might be the difference there. However, I'm sure some of these would still show up, even if you were just looking at all the companies and then sorted by volume over open interest, or some of these other items like the total value of the order.
Absolutely, Jonathan. And again, the reason that I sorted it by my watch list first is because there's a ton of data here. Even if we had all of the contracts or all of the different options trade here, and I filtered it by volume over open interest, there may be a whole bunch of stocks that I'm not concerned with. You may have indexes in there, like the SPY, the S&P 500 ETF, or the triple Q, the QQQ ETF. There could be a number of different tickers in there that I'm not necessarily interested in trading. So the first way that I cut that information down, the first way that I cut out some of the noise, was I applied that watch list filter. And what's great about that is that can be different for everybody. I don't know that someone else has a watch list that has Pinduoduo, GE, Beyond Meat, Lyft, Grubhub, and Apple on it. I mean, maybe there is, but again, it's all about you forming something that you're comfortable doing, something that you watch. It was very easy for me to pull up these companies and then kind of break the trade down, because these are companies that I've been following for quite some time. So I'm giving myself every possible advantage prior to actually making the trade.
Awesome. And then Walter asked, how do you know if a trade is an edge against a position instead of a position itself?
Okay, Walter, that is a great question. And again, there may not be a way for us to answer that because all we can do is go off the data that we have here. And the data that we have here is like in the case of the two examples that I brought up here, we have a high volume over open interest. So we know that people are not necessarily interested, or there are new eyeballs to the contracts. That doesn't necessarily mean that there are new eyeballs to the stock. You're absolutely right. This could be an institution that owns a whole bunch of GE stock. And effectively what they're doing by buying puts is hedging their long position for the long term. Maybe they expect GE to recover, but in the short term, they recognize that GE could really experience some pain. So what they're trying to do is instead of selling their stock, they're going to keep their stock, but they're going to put on a hedge against it. We have no way to confirm that. All we can do is deal with the data that we have. And the data that we have is clearly telling us that, hey, look, in the short term, all right, this stock is probably going to see some more pain. At least that's the way that they're betting. That's the way that they're buying.
That
So
makes sense.
I'm sorry, Jonathan. I actually saw another question here that I kind of tied into that. Is it possible to add a column of where the trade took place, i.e., on the ask or above the ask? I know there is sentiment column, but I'm wondering if I can see where it took place as well. So great question, Robbie. And this is kind of what I was discussing at the beginning of this. There is no column that spits out a result that says above the ask or below the ask. That is what the sentiment is. The sentiment is effectively using this chart to tell you if it's bullish or bearish. However, if you really want to see where that transaction took place in relation to the bid or ask, you can absolutely do that with the current calendar. All you have to do is add the bid and the ask in here. And now what I can do is, let me actually find the trade price. All right, so we have the trade price and we have the bid and the ask. So I'm going to put these next to each other so that they're a little bit easier to read. Okay, so so in the case of this Pinduoduo one, this is very interesting. We have a bid and an ask of 4.5, and we have the option actually going off at 4.5. So it looks like that there was definitely some action in this top one. When you have a sweep like this, especially when you have one that's broken down into 37 routes, the bid and the ask, the only way that the calendar can display this is if it shows you what the last bid and the ask is. So in the case of the Pinduoduo one, you're not necessarily getting the information that you're looking for. However, you are getting that information on the GE ones because we've got a little bit more of a spread here. So, and this is a typical spread for a high volume liquid stock like General Electric. With contracts like this, a penny or 2 pennies, that is a normal spread. So that's exactly what we're seeing here. In this first GE trade, we're actually seeing a spread of a cent. And in the second one, we're seeing a spread of a cent. And in the third one, we're seeing a spread of 2 cents. This is all completely normal. And we can actually tell that what happened here is that these options were going off near the ask. So what we had here is we had a put sweep near the ask. So if we look at the chart here, puts at the ask is in fact bearish. So that's exactly how this is being calculated. Now, with the Pinduoduo one, again, this actually could have been a little bit different, but because there were so many trades here, you're actually just seeing the data from the last one. So I'm not sure that we have a way to change that. But again, I don't necessarily think, and for the Pinduoduo example, I'm not sure that that's required. I don't actually think that we need that information. But so just to circle back and answer your question, there was kind of a lot there to unpack. Yes, you can still figure out where the transaction took place. You'll simply need to add the bid or the ask column to the calendar. And you might want to arrange it in such a way that's easy for you to see where that took place. Remember, what you're paying attention to is the actual option price. So let's see what that's, an option price. And you want to compare that to the bid or the ask. So really great question there, something I actually didn't cover in the example.
Awesome. So guys, I hope that this has been helpful for you. I mean, we've gone pretty in depth on two different examples from Ryan's watch list, and you can develop your own watch list based off of your technical requirements or maybe just your familiarity with a group of stocks because you've been watching them day in and day out. And there are a variety of other tools available here on the platform. We just wanted to really show off today what you can do with this awesome new options activity calendar. So, Ryan, is there more that you want to dig into here, or should we give people just a little peek who are maybe newer to the platform at what else the platform can do?
I'd like to actually do both. I do see there are a couple of questions here that I think I can wrap up real quick, and then maybe we can move into some other features.
Perfect.
So Depp is asking, I have a list very different than yours. Can you show your filters, please, i.e. significant filter attributes? Yes, Depp, I absolutely can do that. So first of all, I have it filtered by my main watch list. Okay, that's the first filter that I have. I've applied my watch list filter. The other filter that I have in here was I actually, and you can tell what filters you have applied. When you click on the filters button and you look at the list of different possible filters, you can tell which one of these has a filter on it by this little icon. All right, so you have the filters icon to the right-hand side. These arrows to the left-hand side, this is how you actually expand the filters menu. But the icon on the right-hand side will tell you that you have something in there. So if I click on last trade here, you can see that what I've done is I've filtered this list to only show me trades that have taken today or that have gone off today. And that's because I wanted to use this, for the sake of this example, I actually wanted to use this tool to say, hey, what can we find that was new today? And simply by doing that, the first two in the list were something that were interesting today. So you can use this, like if you're doing research, if you're back testing something, or if you want to look at, hey, what happened 3 weeks ago because this stock made a really crazy move and maybe the options were telling me something there. You can actually apply that filter in here. Again, for the example today, I just wanted to show the ones that were today. So then he has another question, is PDD from your watch list? If it wasn't, how would you filter this based on volume over interest and find it? Great question. All right. Yes, PDD is absolutely one of the stocks that is on my watch list. So again, the reason that I selected my watch list is because that's a stock that I've been watching over the past couple of years, about a year and a half now, actually. So I'm a little bit more familiar with some of the ways that it trades, some of the move that it makes. And today was a perfect setup for a mean reversion trade. Now, to answer the second part of your question is, how can you find it? Well, all I did was I sorted by volume over open interest. So you have a couple of different options here. You can actually click on the column header at the top, and it will apply a sorting. So this is the way it looked when I just filtered by the watch list, and I just typed in today's date. And what it's doing here is it's not filtered by anything. So it's giving you the most recent transactions.
I think there might be a little bit of confusion just since we've filtered by the watch list for the whole time. But the fact is that you do not have to filter by a watch list.
Correct.
So I don't know if you want to keep this the way it is, but maybe we could just very briefly show them what it looks like without the watch list filter.
Sure.
And yeah, so just like say on another workspace here, you've got it unfiltered, and then you can just go straight to those filters and sorting mechanisms without the watch list filter.
Great call, Jonathan. Thank you very much. So I happen to have another calendar tool open here. It's set to today's date, so I'm seeing all of the trades from today, but I have no other filters applied. I have no watch list filter applied. In fact, if I click on the filters menu, you can see I have no other filter applied. So now to answer your question about the volume over open interest, I can click the column header and sort it in ascending and descending order. And you can see here that I have a whole bunch. These numbers are eye-popping. These are the definition of an eye-popping number. I'm not necessary. First of all, I'm not interested in trading the S&P 500 ETF. That's not part of my trade plan for today. I'm only interested in actual names, and I don't recognize any of these. So there might be some underlying catalyst or some piece of news that I need to discover before I'm able to trade these. And you can see that the volume over open interest, I mean, we're here in the hundreds, and we're scrolling down, we're at 50 50, 40. It could have been a while till you found PDD. So let's see if I can find it here. There it is. There's the trade that we were just looking at. So what I did was I first sorted from volume over open interest, and then I scrolled down in the list, and here is that PDD trade that we were talking about. You can also click on filters, and you can actually filter. You can actually put in your own criteria here. So if you only wanted to see, let's say, for example, you only wanted to see contracts that had a volume over open interest greater than 25. So I can go ahead and apply that filter, close this filter menu, and now the result is that it's only showing me things from today. Move this out of the way. Things from today that have a volume over open interest of 25. So you actually this is a great question, because you've actually asked me something where I can show off why this calendar is valuable. You don't need to filter it by a watch list like I did. You could actually just apply a volume over open interest filter. Or you could apply, as Jonathan mentioned earlier in the presentation, you can actually filter on total option price. So let's remove this filter for a sec. And let's do that. Let's do total option price, and let's do something just big. So you only want to see unusual options trades that were over $1 million worth of capital. So I went ahead and typed $1 million in here, and now look at that. So the total trade price, it's only showing me contracts that took $1 million or more in order to fill. That's pretty crazy. And now you can actually combine that with your volume over open interest. So I've filtered total trade price, but I still have this chart sorted by volume over open interest. And now, because of your example, as soon as this webinar ends, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to go take a look at WPM. And this is not a company that I'm familiar with. So there's more research and due diligence that I need to do in order to figure out if there's a trade here for me. But that was a great example. We filtered for a large trade, and now we're sorting by volume over open interest. So this is something that I'm going to look into when we're done here. So that answers, so is this tool feed for data? So this tool is fed the data from a watch list only. Clark, no. In my first example, yes, I used the watch list filter, but you can get the data that's market wide. It doesn't have to be based on a watch list. All right, so that wraps up the questions that I wanted to cover. Jonathan, do you want to move on to something else in the platform?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think, we're nearing the top of the hour here, right? So we don't have time to go through the plethora of other tools. Just realize that these signals are extremely valuable because you can go straight to the source of the information, very similarly to how people use our newsfeed. Originally, that's what Benzinga has been known for, is the quality and actionable content of our news. So if you're going to start somewhere other than the options calendar, I would say start with the newsfeed. The newsfeed, the Squawk. Check out some of the other recorded webinars on our website. Or Ryan has also done a fantastic step-by-step curriculum outlining the entire platform. So yeah, you can go straight to the source to capture that volatility as soon as possible. Or there's screeners and scanners. So Ryan and I have also shared on other webinars or group demos or his curriculum how we love using the mover scanner to find those biggest gainers and losers, whether that's in the pre-market or throughout the day. So immediately you can say, whoa, something's going on here. Just click through all the charts and see if there's a good play. So, we don't really have time to go through all of that, but I would just say there are lots and lots of ways to make money using Benzinga Pro.
Absolutely. And I just really quickly, because I do think I can go through one of the examples you listed there, Jonathan. This is something that I use every single morning. I use the movers tool to figure out what's moving in the pre-market. And what I have here is I actually have gainers, pre-market, and sessions selected. So effectively what that's showing me are anything that's moving up in the pre-market. These often create gaps. So if you have a trading strategy that allows you to trade gaps, half of the work has been done for you. Literally all you need to do now is find which stock you want to enter and then click the buttons. Everything else is done for you. And it's very, very simple to review this, because now that I have the chart right next to movers, all I have to do is click on these tickers, and it will go ahead and load that ticker into the chart here, and I can actually take a look and see, well, what happened here? What's going on in this particular stock? And in the pre-market, obviously we won't have the regular market data, but you could set up other potential trades from this, and you can actually find out, hey, maybe some of these, I haven't thought about JCPenney since I was in high school. All right, so I had no idea, but JCPenney was up nearly 50% in the pre-market today. So maybe there's something there that you want to trade. Maybe you don't believe that, and you think JCPenney is gonna go down. You can do that. There's a number.
I was actually watching that this morning. It was crazy. It was ripping this morning in the pre-market.
It sure is. I mean, look at this. It looked like yesterday before close, it was printing 14. It ran up. It nearly doubled right before close, and then that action continued in the pre-market this morning. And then as soon as the market opened, it sold off. So there's a ton of stuff that you can gather from a bunch of different tools in this platform. And as Jonathan mentioned, we don't necessarily have the time to go over all of them today, but be sure to use those help resources. I'm really glad he mentioned the help site because we have a ton of stuff. So if you want more information on trading gaps, I actually brought in one of our other members to talk about that. Jonathan and I did a presentation on how you can find low float stocks. James Mason, who runs his own service at Transparent Traders, joined me for discussing some of his favorite indicators that he uses when he's doing technical analysis. So there's a whole bunch of different things that you can gather from our help site. And of course, everything on the help site is free.
Really quick, we have to open up the screener tool because of this question that came in, how we can screen for volume increases. Let's say a 10% increase in volume from the average volume, but average volume be at least 1 million shares. You can do that on our screener. So if we go to technical filters on the screener, and then we go to average volume, and you can choose the average volume over the past 90, 60, 30, or 10 days. I think, so you can just choose, all right, which of those time periods do you want to base it off of, and then say, all right, up at least 10%. If you just click on one of those filters.
So I'm just going to select the average volume here, and it looks like what we have to enter in is what is the actual value that we want to
Oh, okay. See. So I was wrong on that.
No, but this is great. So let me actually take this a step further real quick. All right, let me go ahead and I'm going to use these little buttons here to add several of these columns to the results list because I want to see how the average volume is changing over these time periods. All right, so what I'm seeing here is that if we look at JCPenney here, this is a perfect example because we were just talking about it. Right now, I can see that over the last 90 days, the average volume was 13.9 million shares. But the average volume over the past 10 days is 43.5 million shares. That's 2.5 times the average volume recently. So that can tell you that something's going on there. Just looking at that number, we can determine, if you take a look at Zoom video, 90 days ago, the average volume was 10.8, but over the past week, it's 9.37. Over the past month, it's been 14, or it's been nearly 15. Over the past 2 months, it's been nearly 15. Well, that makes sense. Zoom got a lot of publicity with the whole coronavirus and everyone working from home and doing remote meetings. So there is a whole bunch of information that you can gather from this. Now, going back to your example.
You could also use relative volume, by the way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, let me go ahead and add that here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and add the relative volume column as well. And let me actually remove float. Oops, click the wrong button there. I just want to make this a little bit easier to see since we have a whole bunch of columns added to this now. All right, so now you can see the relative volume, and you can actually filter on this, or excuse me, sort on this, right? So you can click relative volume and look what stands out there. So the relative volume for JCP is much, much higher recently. So, and you were asking, I want to filter based on, let's say, 10% increase in volume from average, but the average volume to at least be 1 million. So that's the number that we were putting in here. So I selected 10 million, but if you wanted the average volume to at least be 1 million, now we have
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say now we have greater than or equal to 1 million shares over the past 30 days, and it's only showing me those.
And then you just set your lower parameter for relative volume to be a multiplier of 1.1, which would be at least 10% higher than the average volume over the past 90 days.
There you go, Jonathan.
There you have it.
So there you have it. So again, there are a ton of tools in Pro that you can use, and you don't have to use all of them. There's no like equation where if you use the right tools together, you're going to guarantee yourself a win. It's whatever. If you need to do research, if you need to monitor something, there's probably a tool in Benzinga Pro that can help you do that.
Awesome. Well, guys, thanks so much for joining us today. As always, Ryan, it's been great learning from you. I hope everyone else learned as much as I did. And if there's anything else that we can do to help all of you who are on here or watching the recording, definitely reach out to us either at onboarding@benzinga.com or vipaccounts@benzinga.com. We also have that chat bubble in the bottom right corner of the platform. We're always available. So don't be strangers, reach out, and we look forward to talking to you soon.
Absolutely.